One of the quieter lessons of the Korean War had nothing to do with tactics, ideology, or diplomacy. It emerged instead from cold, damp conditions that punished equipment and infrastructure more ruthlessly than enemy fire. In Korea, modern armies discovered that untreated or poorly protected wood failed fast in extreme climates, while older, traditionally treated timbers, often salvaged locally, sometimes outlasted newer materials. This ran against a powerful mid-20th century assumption that industrial treatments had rendered historical building knowledge obsolete. That assumption was wrong, and it echoes a much older truth that medieval builders understood instinctively. Long before chemical preservatives or standardized lumber, timber treatment was a survival technology. It determined whether fortifications stood, whether bridges held, and whether supply structures rotted away before a campaign was finished. If you value historical analysis that connects material culture to real-world survival, consider subscribing to History Matters. This channel focuses on the overlooked mechanics of history, the details that shaped outcomes long before anyone wrote them down. In the medieval world, timber was everywhere and always under threat. Moisture, insects, fungi, and temperature shifts attacked wood constantly. Stone construction was expensive and slow, and even stone fortifications relied heavily on wooden floors, hoardings, gates, and scaffolding. If timber failed, defenses failed. As a result, timber treatment was embedded into military and civilian planning. Builders did not treat wood because it was aesthetically pleasing or culturally symbolic. They treated it because untreated wood collapsed, rotted, or burned too quickly to be reliable. Castles, siege engines, ships, and granaries all depended on wood that could survive years of exposure. This mindset differs sharply from many modern approaches where timber treatment is often seen as optional or secondary to design. One of the most important medieval practices was patience. Timber was rarely used green unless absolutely necessary. Logs were felled at specific times of year, often winter, when sap content was lower. This reduced internal moisture and slowed decay. Seasoning could take months or, even years. Beams were stacked in such a way to allow airflow, kept safely off the ground, and, rotated when needed. In military contexts, this actually meant that fortification repairs were often planned around the availability of seasoned timber, not just immediate convenience. Archaeological analysis from sites across England and France, it shows consistent patterns of long-term wood storage near castles and towns. Builders clearly understood that durability began long before construction ever started. One of the most widespread medieval timber treatments was, honestly, controlled charring. By exposing the outer surface of wood to fire, they hardened it, reduced how much moisture it could absorb, and made it, less appealing to insects. This technique was commonly used for posts driven into the ground, palisades, and, of course, bridge supports. Charring did not make wood fireproof, but it slowed rot dramatically. In wet environments, charred posts lasted years longer than untreated ones. This practice appears repeatedly in northern and eastern Europe, particularly in regions with heavy rainfall or marshy ground. Modern builders often rediscover this technique under names like Shusugi Ban, but medieval use was purely functional, not decorative. Where available, medieval builders used natural sealants. Pine tar, linseed oil, animal fats, and waxes were applied to exposed wood, especially in maritime or military settings. Ships, harbour defences, and riverside structures depended on these treatments. The Viking world provides clear examples. Norse ships and coastal buildings used tar distilled from pine roots, a process refined over generations. This protected hull planks and structural timbers from saltwater degradation and fungal growth. Similar methods were used inland for gate mechanisms, drawbridges, and siege equipment. These treatments were renewable and repairable, a crucial advantage in prolonged conflicts. During sieges, defenders relied on wooden elements more than stone. Hoardings, internal floors, ladders, and bracing systems were all timber-based. Poorly treated wood absorbed moisture, warped, and failed under load. Historical accounts from sieges in the High Middle Ages describe structural collapses not caused by enemy action, but by rotten water infiltration. These failures often occurred after long periods of rain, when untreated wood reached saturation. Well-treated timber extended defensive endurance. It allowed structures to remain usable deep into prolonged sieges, buying time when, honestly, time was the most valuable resource. Returning to the Korean War, engineers and logisticians faced terrain and weather that, destroyed infrastructure rapidly. Temporary bridges, shelters, and storage facilities suffered severe degradation when built with inadequately treated lumber. In some cases, older wooden structures, or built using traditional drying and oiling methods, proved more resilient. This actually surprised planners who assumed, that modern materials would automatically perform better. The lesson was uncomfortable but clear. Ignoring environmental realities leads to material failure regardless of technological era. This mirrored medieval experience almost exactly. Climate dictated material success, and timber treatment was the difference between endurance and collapse. Another overlooked aspect of medieval timber treatment is its relationship to maintenance. Treated wood was not expected to last forever. It was expected to last long enough to be repaired. Beams were accessible. Surfaces could be re-oiled or recharred. Damaged sections could be replaced without dismantling entire structures. This modular thinking reduced catastrophic failure and, honestly, extended the lifespan of buildings far beyond what untreated wood would allow. Modern construction often hides timber behind finishes, making inspection and repair difficult. Medieval builders prioritized visibility and access because, survival depended on it. The relevance today is not about copying medieval methods exactly, it is about restoring the logic behind them. Material selection must match environment. Treatment must address real threats, not theoretical ones. Maintenance must be planned, not avoided. So, in off-grid construction, disaster preparedness, and also long-term resilience planning, these principles really do matter. Medieval timber treatment was not primitive at all. In fact, it was adaptive engineering that relied on observation, learning from failure, and making corrections along the way. When modern builders dismiss these methods as outdated, they're often just repeating mistakes that, history already solved. Medieval timber treatments really mattered because they sat right at the intersection of environment, warfare, and survival. They kept structures standing when resources were honestly pretty limited, and failure just wasn't an option. The Korean War, for instance, reminded modern societies that these lessons were never obsolete, only forgotten. Remembering how and why people treated wood the way they did, it actually changes how we think about progress. It reminds us that durability isn't guaranteed by novelty, and that sometimes the most reliable solutions come from long experience rather than rapid innovation. So, if you value this kind of careful, material-focused historical analysis, go ahead and subscribe to History Matters. And please share this video with others who appreciate history that explains how societies endured, not just how they fought.